Kailara moved silently through the rocky terrain of SCIFI-Prime. The planet was harsh and unforgiving. Red dust blew across jagged cliffs, and the sun burned pale and cold in the sky. Every step she took was careful, precise. She was a hunter, one of the best her people had ever trained. Kailara had never failed to catch her prey. Not once. Today, she was hunting something different. Something unusual. Something that was supposed to be weak, fragile, and easy to defeat. A human. Humans were known across the galaxy as clever, yes, but physically inferior. They were slow, soft, and unprepared for the dangers of alien worlds. Kailara had heard stories of a single human who had survived impossible encounters with deadly predators, extreme environments, and hostile alien factions. That human's name was Ethan. Kailara's pride flared. "A human thinks it can survive here," she whispered to herself. "I will show it the meaning of true hunting." She adjusted her gear. Her claws, sharp and reinforced with alien alloys, glinted in the dim sunlight. Her eyes, adapted to see movement at great distances, scanned the horizon. Every shadow, every slight movement of dust, every shift in the wind was a potential clue. Kailara was patient. She did not rush. The best hunters always waited for the perfect moment. The trail was faint. Ethan had passed this way hours ago, perhaps even days, yet Kailara could sense him. The ground told stories to those who knew how to listen. She knelt, examining footprints that were small and oddly balanced. Humans were not made to walk long distances over such rough terrain, yet this one had done so easily. "Interesting," she murmured. Clever little creature. Kailara set her first traps. They were simple, yet deadly. A snare hidden among jagged rocks, a pit covered with false ground, and a series of sound sensors that could alert her to movement across a wide area. She worked quickly, silently, her mind sharp and focused. Each trap was a test of her intelligence as much as her skill. But Kailara had learned something important. Ethan was not an ordinary human. He had survived encounters with predators that could swallow a full-grown alien in a single bite. He had escaped hostile tribes and merciless hunters. He was clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. That unpredictability excited Kailara. It was rare to find prey that challenged her mind as well as her skills. She felt a spark of something she had not felt in years: anticipation. The first movement came from the rocks ahead. Kailara froze, holding her breath. A small creature scuttled across her path. It was not Ethan, but the alien wildlife of SCIFI-Prime. Kailara's eyes followed it, then returned to the trail. Every distraction was a test of patience. Every sound, every motion could be her prey or could mislead her. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Kailara moved like a shadow, silent and calculating. She studied the environment, reading the landscape for signs of life. Ethan had left traces, subtle but present. Broken twigs, footprints in the red dust, faint traces of heat from his body. She noted each one carefully. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows, Kailara caught sight of something remarkable. There, on a ridge above her, was the trail of the human, clear, fresh, and deliberate. He had stopped to rest, leaving evidence of a campfire and some scraps of food. Kailara smiled. Finally, she would confront him. She approached cautiously, careful not to alert her prey. The human was small, lean, but there was a sharpness in his posture. He moved with awareness, his head scanning constantly. Kailara's instincts told her that he was aware of danger, perhaps even sensing her presence. She crouched behind a rock, observing him. Ethan was preparing for the night. He had a small device that produced heat and light without fire, a human invention. Kailara studied it with fascination. Humans were weak, yes, but they had tools and minds that could rival the strongest of her species. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of crimson and orange, Kalara prepared for the final stage of her hunt. She would wait until nightfall, when shadows were long and the terrain was dangerous. That was when she would strike. She would show the human the true meaning of the hunt. Night fell quickly on SCIFI-Prime. The temperature dropped, and the wind carried strange sounds. Kalara moved closer, using her night vision to track Ethan's movements. She was silent, her body blending into the rocks and shadows. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. Ethan did not seem afraid. He moved with caution, yes, but also with confidence. Kalara noticed this and paused. Confidence in prey was dangerous. A cautious, fearful target could be led into a trap. A confident, intelligent target could turn the tables. She made a mental note. This human was dangerous. She set her final trap, a net of reinforced cables that could immobilize even a large predator. Hidden beneath loose rocks, it was nearly invisible. She tested the mechanism from a distance, ensuring it would trigger at the right moment. Kalara crouched nearby, waiting. Minutes stretched into hours. The human approached, unaware of the trap beneath him. He moved carefully, but not in a predictable pattern. Kalara's eyes narrowed. He was clever, but she was cleverer. Every move she made had been calculated, and now she only needed the perfect moment. And then it happened. Ethan stepped on the false ground covering her trap. The cables shot up, but he reacted instantly. With agility Kalara did not expect from a human, he twisted, landed on his feet, and avoided the net. For a moment they both froze. She was stunned. How had he seen the trap? How had he avoided it? Kalara's pride burned. She had never failed before, never. Yet here was a human defying everything she knew about weakness and survival. She felt a strange sensation in her chest, a mix of frustration, admiration, and curiosity. Ethan did not run. He looked around, scanning for threats. Kalara watched him, analyzing his movements. He was learning, adapting, and observing. That was something her own people valued highly. He was not just surviving. He was learning from the environment, from every danger, and from her actions. Kalara decided to test him further. She triggered another trap hidden nearby, a pit designed to be unavoidable once the human stepped in the right area. Ethan moved again, carefully, but the trap activated. He fell, but not as expected. Using a quick motion, he grabbed the edge and swung himself out, landing lightly on the ground. Kalara's jaw tightened. This human was extraordinary. Her mind raced. How could something so small and seemingly weak avoid traps that could kill the strongest alien? She felt the thrill of the hunt more intensely than ever before. This was no ordinary prey. This was a challenge worthy of her skill. Kalara stepped out from her hiding place, making herself visible. The wind carried her scent, and the human looked up, startled, but not afraid. She expected fear, panic, perhaps even a surrender. Instead, she saw something else: awareness, intelligence, and a spark of courage. "You are not like the others," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You survive when you should not." "Why?" Ethan regarded her carefully. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he studied her, understanding that she was both predator and observer. Finally, he said, "I survive because I adapt, because I learn, and because I respect life, even yours." Kalara's eyes narrowed. Respect. That was alien to her culture. Prey did not respect hunters. Prey feared them, ran from them, or fought to escape. Yet this human spoke calmly, without fear. His words were not arrogance. They were truth. The night deepened, and Kalara realized something important. This hunt was not going to be simple. The human was clever, quick, and observant. He was not prey in the traditional sense. He was a challenge, a worthy adversary, and that excited her more than any victory she had ever known. For the first time in her life, Kailara felt that the hunt was not just about catching. It was about understanding, learning, and testing herself against something truly unpredictable. She had expected an easy victory. Instead, she faced a human who could think, adapt, and survive in ways she had never imagined. Kailara crouched behind the rocks once more, watching. She adjusted her traps, refined her strategies, and prepared for the next phase. This hunt would not end tonight. It was only beginning. And somewhere deep in her mind, a small thought whispered, perhaps this human would teach her something she could never learn from her own kind. The night was alive with possibility, danger, and anticipation. Kailara's hunt had begun, but she had no idea that the human she thought she was hunting was already preparing a trap of his own. The dawn light was pale and cold as Kailara continued her hunt. The rocky terrain of SCIFI-Prime seemed even harsher in the morning, jagged cliffs casting long shadows that shifted with the rising sun. Every step Kailara took was careful, deliberate. She had been tracking the human Ethan for hours, and every instinct told her he was nearby. Ethan moved differently from any prey Kailara had ever encountered. He did not flee in panic, nor did he make noise that would betray his position. Instead, he walked with awareness, scanning the terrain, analyzing every shadow and every sound. Kailara had followed him through narrow canyons, over rocky ridges, and across shallow streams. At every turn, she had seen evidence of his intelligence. A small trap that Kailara had set the night before had already failed. Ethan had detected it, using his eyes, his hands, and something she could not identify. An instinct? A sense of awareness beyond what Kailara expected from a human? She did not know. All she knew was that this hunt was unlike any she had ever experienced. Kailara crouched behind a rock, her sharp eyes watching him. He moved steadily, lightly, with surprising strength in his arms and legs. She saw how he stepped over loose stones, adjusted his weight, and maintained balance across jagged ground. Even when a gust of wind blew red dust into his path, he did not flinch. Kailara's respect for him grew, though she refused to admit it. Respect was dangerous. Respect could make hunters hesitate. The human paused near a ridge, crouching low. He examined the ground, noting something Kailara had overlooked, a small, almost invisible line across the rocks. It was a wire, part of one of her traps. He smiled faintly, reaching into his pack and removing a small, flat device. With precise movements, he disarmed the wire, making the trap harmless. Kailara's jaw tightened. She had expected him to fall for it, to struggle, to panic. Instead, he adapted, improvised, and neutralized her efforts. He was clever, far cleverer than she had anticipated. She decided to test him further. Using a rock ledge above him, she dropped a weighted net from a distance. It fell silently, a shadow in the rocks, yet Ethan saw it before it hit. He leaped sideways, landing gracefully on solid ground. Kailara felt a flicker of amazement. "No human should move like that," she whispered, almost to herself. Ethan did not run. Instead, he moved cautiously, almost as if he wanted her to follow him. Kailara realized that he understood the hunt as much as she did. He studied her, analyzed her movements, and reacted in ways that forced her to adapt. For the first time, Kailara felt the thrill of danger in a new way. She was no longer merely hunting. She was being tested. The chase led them into a narrow canyon. The walls were high, jagged, and dangerous. Loose rocks tumbled underfoot, and every step could trigger a landslide. Kailara moved silently, her claws gripping the stones. Ethan moved ahead carefully, but he did not seem afraid of the dangers. Kailara set small alarms along the path, devices that would signal movement if tripped. She thought that with enough preparation, she could corner him. Yet each time she activated a device, Ethan found a way around it, sometimes disarming it, sometimes using it to his advantage. At one point, he dropped a small rock down a narrow crevice, causing a larger boulder to shift. It blocked her path temporarily, forcing her to find another route. Kylara's heart raced with excitement. She had never faced prey that could manipulate the environment so effectively. As the sun climbed higher, the canyon opened to a plateau. Ethan paused, crouched low, and looked back toward her position. Kylara realized he was inviting her to follow, testing her reaction. She tightened her grip on her weapons, careful not to let pride blind her. The plateau was dotted with alien plants, strange flora that could produce sparks or sudden movements when touched. Kylara had to navigate carefully, avoiding hazards while keeping sight of Ethan. She noticed that he moved with knowledge of the plant's behavior, stepping precisely where needed to avoid triggering danger. It was not just strength that allowed him to survive. It was intelligence, observation, and careful calculation. Kylara reflected on her own people. Her species valued strength, speed, and skill above all else. Adaptation was respected, but only within the framework of physical dominance. Humans were different. They did not rely on strength alone. They used their minds, their creativity, and their sense of observation. And it worked. They survived. They thrived. The human paused again near a small ravine. Kylara crouched behind a rock to observe. He was not hiding, yet he remained difficult to reach. She realized that he was thinking several steps ahead, predicting her actions as she predicted his. The hunt had become a battle of minds, as well as bodies. Kylara decided it was time to escalate. She activated a device in her pack, causing a faint sound and a small flash of light in the canyon ahead. It was designed to scare prey into running into her trap. She expected him to panic to take the obvious path. Ethan stopped. He did not move toward the trap, nor did he flee. Instead, he examined the device with curiosity, understanding its purpose and using a small mirror-like tool to redirect the light. The sound echoed harmlessly against the canyon walls. Once again, Kylara's plan failed. She felt a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. No prey had ever resisted her so effectively. Ethan was not just surviving. He was teaching her lessons with every move. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, turning the plateau red and gold. Kylara kept pace, careful not to make mistakes. Every trap she set, every device she activated, was tested by Ethan's ingenuity. He moved quickly, but not recklessly. He was calculating, observing, and reacting to her strategy. Finally, they reached a narrow bridge of stone over a deep chasm. Kylara could see the human stepping carefully, testing the strength of the bridge before each move. She knew she could force him to fall with the right tactic, but she hesitated. This prey, this human, was no ordinary target. He was teaching her, challenging her, and she was beginning to respect him. As they moved across the bridge, Kylara made a small slip in her calculations. A loose stone under her foot shifted, causing her to lose balance for a moment. Ethan saw it, and for the first time, she realized he could predict her mistakes before they happened. "You are clever," Kylara admitted softly, even as her pride burned. Ethan glanced at her, not with fear, but with acknowledgement. "I observe. I learn. That is how humans survive," he said. His voice was calm, steady, and full of quiet confidence. Kylara's claws flexed. She had never heard such words from prey. Usually, prey begged, panicked, or ran. This human spoke with clarity, dignity, and intelligence. She felt something shift within her. The hunt was no longer about proving dominance. It was about understanding, respect, and the thrill of facing something truly unpredictable. Night fell once again, and the canyon was bathed in pale moonlight. Shadows stretched across the walls, and strange alien sounds echoed through the rocks. Kaylara and Ethan were still moving, still cautious, still testing each other's limits. Kaylara set one final test for the night, a pit trap disguised by natural rocks. She expected him to fall in, to struggle, to give her the victory she had been denied all day. Ethan approached the pit carefully, studied the terrain, and used a small pole from his pack to test the ground. When he saw the trap, he smiled faintly, adjusted his step, and avoided it entirely. Kaylara felt a mixture of awe and frustration. This human, small and seemingly fragile, had outsmarted her at every turn. Finally, Ethan stopped and looked back at her. "You are a skilled hunter," he said, "but you underestimate humans. We survive because we think differently, because we adapt, and because we respect life, even yours." Kaylara felt a chill. Respect. That was alien to her. Prey did not respect hunters. Prey feared them, fought them, or fled. Yet here was a human speaking calmly, confidently, without fear or arrogance. For the first time in her life, Kaylara wondered, perhaps the human she thought she was hunting was teaching her a lesson. Perhaps the trap was not for him, but for her. The night was alive with possibility, danger, and anticipation. The hunt was far from over, but Kaylara knew one thing for certain. This human was unlike anything she had ever faced. And for the first time, she felt excitement, not just for the victory, but for the challenge itself. Kaylara crouched in the shadows, watching, analyzing, and learning. Ethan had survived another day on SciFi-Prime. But the hunt was not finished. Tomorrow would bring new strategies, new tests, and new challenges. And somewhere deep in her mind, Kaylara admitted to herself quietly, the human was not prey. He was a puzzle, a rival, and perhaps even a teacher. The chase had truly begun. The next morning, the air on SciFi-Prime was sharp and dry, carrying the scent of dust and distant rock fires. Kaylara moved carefully across the uneven terrain, her eyes scanning every shadow, every glint of light, for the faintest sign of movement. Her hunt had changed in subtle ways. She no longer thought of the human simply as prey. He was clever, quick, and unpredictable, and that made him dangerous. Ethan, meanwhile, moved through the jagged canyons with cautious confidence. He had noticed the traps Kaylara had set and had studied them in detail. Each time she tried to anticipate his path, he found a way around it, or sometimes used her own devices against her. She was learning from him as much as he was surviving because of her. Kaylara crouched on a high ridge, observing him. He paused near a shallow ravine, crouching low to inspect the ground. Small alien creatures scuttled nearby, and Ethan carefully avoided harming them. He helped one that was caught in a tangle of roots, freeing it gently before moving on. Kaylara watched, fascinated. Humans were supposed to be weak, but this one was different, not just in survival skill, but in his attitude. He did not kill without reason, did not act recklessly, and seemed to understand the delicate balance of life around him. Kaylara felt a mixture of irritation and admiration. Her people valued strength above all, but this human survived through observation, patience, and care. Kaylara decided it was time to close the distance. She descended into the canyon, careful not to alert him. She moved silently, stepping lightly over loose stones and avoiding shadows that might betray her presence. Every movement was calculated, every breath controlled. Ethan paused again, sensing something. Kaylara held her position behind a boulder. He scanned the surroundings carefully, aware of every sound and movement. Kaylara admired his awareness. Most prey would panic by now, but Ethan was calm, thinking ahead, analyzing the terrain. A sudden gust of wind stirred the dust, and Kaylara's attention flicked to the ridge above. Something moved in the shadows, a small predator native to SciFi-Prime. It hissed, its claws scraping against stone. Kylara froze, assessing the situation. If the creature noticed her, it might attack, or worse, alert Ethan. Ethan reacted before she could. He picked up a long stick and guided the predator away, diverting it without harming it. Kylara felt her respect for him deepen. He was not just clever, he was thoughtful. Every decision, every movement was deliberate. He was learning not just to survive, but to coexist with the dangers around him. Kylara's pride flared. She had never encountered prey that was so much more than prey. Her mind raced with strategies, each one more complex than the last. She set small traps along the canyon floor, hoping to guide Ethan into a controlled area. Each trap was subtle, almost invisible, designed to force him toward the path she wanted. Ethan approached the traps cautiously. He paused, studying the ground, noticing subtle signs Kylara had left behind. A disturbed stone here, a slightly different shade of dust there. He could read the environment as she could. Carefully, he stepped around the traps, using a combination of observation and intuition. Each step was deliberate, precise, and safe. Kylara felt a thrill. She had underestimated him before, and she would not make that mistake again. The hunt was no longer about proving her skill, it was about testing limits. She wanted to see how far the human could go, how clever he could be. And in the process, she was learning something about herself. Hours passed. The sun climbed high, and the heat of the day pressed down on the canyon. Kylara remained hidden, watching. Ethan moved steadily, conserving energy and observing the environment with care. He noticed water sources, safe paths, and areas where predators might hide. Kylara noted his choices carefully, impressed by his ability to adapt. She remembered her own training, the lessons of her people. Strength, speed, cunning, these had always been enough. But Ethan survived without the advantages her species relied on. He had no superior strength, no enhanced vision, no alien reflexes. Yet he adapted, survived, and thrived. He was a living lesson in intelligence and observation. As the day wore on, Kylara decided to confront him, not to capture him, but to test his reaction. She stepped out from her hiding place, letting the sun catch her silhouette. Ethan froze, recognizing her immediately. There was no fear in his eyes, only awareness and calculation. "You are clever," Kylara said, her voice calm but sharp. "More clever than I expected." Ethan regarded her carefully. "And you are skilled," he replied. "But strength alone does not guarantee survival." Kylara felt a flicker of surprise. Most prey did not speak like this. Most humans, if they survived, were cautious and silent. Ethan was different. He spoke with confidence, intelligence, and respect for the hunt itself. "You are different from the others," she continued. "I expected fear. I expected weakness, yet you move like a predator yourself." Ethan nodded. "I survive by learning, by observing, by adapting. Every step, every sound, every shadow tells me something. That is why I am alive." Kylara studied him. His words were simple, but they carried a weight she had not expected. There was a lesson here, one she had never learned from her own kind. Humans were small, yes, but they had minds that could rival the strongest and fastest aliens. The canyon floor shifted as a sudden tremor shook the ground. Rocks tumbled from above, and Kylara reacted instantly, dodging falling debris. Ethan moved quickly as well, using his agility to avoid the danger. Yet the tremor was not natural. It had been caused by Kylara herself. She had triggered a small trap designed to test his reaction. He moved flawlessly, avoiding danger, guiding himself through the debris with precision. Kylara realized he had anticipated the threat before it fully formed. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar: humility. This human was teaching her lessons in survival, strategy, and awareness. They paused near a small stream of water that glowed faintly in the alien light. Kaylara drank quickly, observing him. He drank calmly, conserving energy, aware of the surrounding dangers. She noticed how he treated the environment with care, not wasting resources, not disturbing the fragile ecosystem around him. "Your people survive differently," Kaylara said softly. "You adapt. Observe and think. Not just fight, not just hunt, but learn." Ethan looked up, his eyes calm. "That is what humans do. We are not the strongest, but we survive. That is enough." Kaylara considered his words. Her people valued dominance, victory, and physical skill. Humans valued intelligence, observation, and careful action. And yet, here was a human thriving in ways she could barely comprehend. She felt her pride and arrogance being challenged by something so simple and yet so profound. The afternoon sun began to fade, casting long shadows across the canyon. Kaylara moved carefully, knowing that Ethan was aware of her presence, even if he could not see her. She set a small alarm to alert her if he approached, then observed how he would react. He did not panic. He studied the environment, noticed the subtle signs of her devices, and used the terrain to his advantage. Kaylara realized something important. Ethan was not just surviving by chance. He was surviving by design. Every movement, every decision, every action was deliberate. He was learning from her, just as she was learning from him. Night fell once again, and the canyon became a maze of shadows and whispers. Kaylara crouched silently, listening to the sounds of the alien world. Ethan was somewhere nearby, moving cautiously, observing, adapting. The hunt had become a battle of minds, not just skill. Kaylara realized that this chase had changed her. She no longer thought of victory as a simple capture or kill. The hunt was about testing limits, understanding intelligence, and seeing how far the human could go. And she felt something strange: anticipation, excitement, and even respect. The human she thought she was hunting was teaching her more than she could have imagined. She had underestimated him at every turn, yet he survived, adapted, and thrived. She was beginning to understand that survival was more than strength. It was awareness, intelligence, and respect for life. Kaylara knew the chase would continue. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new strategies, and new lessons. And deep in her mind, she understood one truth. Ethan was not just a human. He was a teacher, a rival, and a challenge unlike any she had faced. The night was quiet, save for the wind through the canyon and the distant sounds of alien creatures. Kaylara crouched, ready, and waited. Ethan was nearby, clever and aware, moving with precision and intelligence. The hunt was far from over, but for the first time, Kaylara felt the thrill of learning as much as the thrill of the chase. She knew that tomorrow, she would have to be sharper, quicker, and wiser than ever. And for the first time in her life, she welcomed the challenge. The sun rose slowly over SCIFI-Prime, spilling pale gold across the jagged cliffs and red dust of the canyon. Kaylara had spent the night preparing. Every movement, every trap, every hidden device was carefully planned. Today she would end the hunt. Today she would prove that no human, no matter how clever, could escape her. Kaylara crouched behind a boulder, adjusting a snare trap with precision. The cables were nearly invisible, woven from reinforced alien fibers. Once triggered, they would immobilize anything caught, even a large predator. Nearby, she had hidden small pressure plates connected to alarms and nets. She had studied Ethan's previous movements carefully and predicted his path with confidence. "This will be the end," she whispered to herself, a flicker of pride in her voice. "No human survives this." Ethan was ahead, moving steadily along the canyon floor. He had noticed subtle changes in the environment, small stones out of place, broken branches, and faint signs of preparation. Kalara smiled. She expected him to be cautious, but not this clever. He was learning, adapting, and adjusting at every step. Kalara's pride sharpened. He had survived so far because of luck and intelligence, but today, luck would run out. Her traps were perfect, her planning flawless. This time, she would not fail. She triggered a small device, releasing a faint light and sound to lure Ethan toward the first snare. The human paused, crouched, and examined the ground carefully. Kalara expected him to step forward and be caught. Instead, he used a small mirror-like tool to reflect the light away and adjusted his step to avoid the trap entirely. Kalara's eyes narrowed. He was clever, yes, but she had anticipated even cleverness. She had built layers of traps. One failure would lead him into another, more dangerous. The first trap was only a signal, a test. The second, the third, and the fourth were real threats. Ethan moved with care, observing every detail. His senses were sharp, his mind working faster than most predators Kalara had faced. She realized that this human had not only survived the hunt, but he was also predicting her actions. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, unease. As he approached the second trap, a net hidden under loose rocks. Kalara watched intently. She triggered it remotely, expecting him to be caught. Ethan jumped aside at the last moment, landing lightly and silently on solid ground. His movements were precise, almost fluid. Kalara's pride faltered. How could a human anticipate such careful planning? She moved closer, following him carefully. Every step she took was calculated to remain hidden, to remain unpredictable. Yet she noticed a strange thought creeping into her mind. Perhaps this hunt was no longer about her victory. Perhaps it was about understanding. Ethan paused near a narrow canyon stream. He crouched low, examining the flowing water. Kalara noticed how he assessed the environment, the strength of the rocks, the flow of the water, the hidden dangers. Every choice he made was deliberate, every movement cautious and intelligent. She realized he was not just surviving, he was thriving. Kalara decided it was time for her ultimate trap, the one that would finish the hunt. She had designed it carefully, using a combination of technology and terrain. A series of hidden pressure plates would trigger nets, snares, and small explosive devices designed to disorient and immobilize. Once activated, there would be no escape. She activated the sequence remotely, holding her breath as she watched. Ethan approached the first plate cautiously. He paused, then leapt to the side. The device activated, sending nets and small bursts of light across the canyon floor. Yet he reacted instantly, using the terrain to his advantage, landing safely on solid ground. Kalara's eyes widened. This human was extraordinary. He had predicted her moves, reacted with speed and intelligence, and remained calm under pressure. No prey she had ever hunted had this level of awareness. Ethan paused, crouched low, and examined the final sequence. He noticed a pattern in her traps, a rhythm in the way she had arranged them. With a small gesture, he manipulated a hidden lever and redirected the traps. Nets tangled in rocks, alarms triggered false signals, and small devices went off harmlessly. Kalara stared, stunned. Her perfect trap had been turned against her. The hunter was being hunted. Ethan stood calmly, observing her position. "You are skilled," he said quietly. "But you underestimate humans. We survive by thinking differently, by adapting, and by respecting life, even yours." Kalara felt a surge of conflicting emotions: pride, frustration, admiration. Her entire strategy had been flawless in her mind, yet this human had outsmarted her at every turn. She realized that the hunt had changed. She was no longer in complete control. The canyon grew quiet except for the sound of flowing water and distant winds. Kelara moved cautiously, realizing that every step she took could trigger another of her own traps now redirected by Ethan. He had anticipated her behavior, studied her patterns, and turned her strengths into weaknesses. Ethan took a careful step forward, then stopped. His eyes met hers. There was no fear, no aggression, only awareness and quiet confidence. Kelara felt her pulse quicken. The hunter she had been had shifted. She was being tested in ways she had never expected. "You have adapted," she admitted softly. "More than I thought possible." Ethan nodded. "I have survived because I observe, learn, and adapt. Strength alone is not enough." Kelara realized the truth in his words. Her species valued strength, speed, and cunning, but humans valued intelligence, observation, and careful action. They could survive where others would fail. She felt a mixture of humility and respect. The human moved closer, carefully avoiding the remaining traps. Kelara could see his every step, yet she could not predict his next move. He had become the hunter, and she had become the prey. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. Kelara adjusted her stance, preparing for the final confrontation. She would not admit defeat, but she had to acknowledge the human's skill. Every action she had taken, every plan she had made, had been anticipated and countered. For the first time, she faced someone who could match her mind as well as her skill. Ethan stopped a few meters away, crouched low, and studied her. "I did not come here to kill you," he said. "I only want to survive, and in doing so, I hope we both learn." Kelara's claws flexed. Her pride burned, but she felt a strange respect for the human standing before her. This was no ordinary prey. This was a challenge, a teacher, and a rival. She stepped forward cautiously. "You are clever," she said, "but the hunt is not over." Ethan smiled faintly. "Perhaps not, but you have learned something as well. Survival is not just strength. It is intelligence, awareness, and respect." Kelara paused, considering his words. She had never admitted such truths to herself before. She realized that the human had outsmarted her, not through brute force, but through careful observation and clever adaptation. The canyon was quiet, except for the soft sound of flowing water and distant echoes. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the rocks. Kelara and Ethan faced each other, predator and prey, yet neither fully dominant. The ultimate trap had failed. The hunter had become the hunted, and yet there was no violence. Ethan had turned her own strategy against her, demonstrating that intelligence and awareness could outmatch raw skill. Kelara felt her perspective shift. She had entered this hunt confident, certain that she would prove human weakness. Instead, she had discovered human strength, the strength of mind, strategy, and adaptability. She realized that survival was not about killing or domination. It was about understanding, observing, and reacting. Ethan stepped closer, his movements calm and deliberate. "We are not enemies," he said. "We are survivors, and perhaps in this, we can learn from each other." Kelara's pride wavered. She had hunted all her life, but this hunt had taught her something she had never expected: respect for a species she had once considered weak. Humans were small, fragile, and underestimated, but they were capable of surviving in ways her people could not always imagine. For the first time, Kelara felt that the hunt was not about victory or defeat. It was about understanding, learning, and testing limits. The human she thought she was hunting had become a teacher, and she, the hunter, had become the student. The canyon night was alive with possibility. Strange alien sounds echoed through the cliffs, and the wind carried dust and whispers. Kelara crouched, ready, alert, and thoughtful. Ethan had survived her ultimate trap, and she knew that the next encounter would test both of them in ways neither could predict. The hunt was far from over, but the balance had shifted. The human had shown her that survival required more than strength, more than speed, more than cunning. It required intelligence, observation, and respect. And somewhere deep within Kailara, a new understanding began to take root. The human she thought she was hunting was not simply prey. He was a challenge, a rival, and perhaps even a guide, teaching her lessons she could never learn from her own kind. The night stretched on, silent and tense, as predator and prey faced each other across the canyon floor. Kailara's traps had failed, but her mind was alive with new strategies and thoughts. Ethan had survived, adapted, and outsmarted her at every turn. For the first time, Kailara welcomed the uncertainty, the danger, and the thrill of learning from a human. The hunt was no longer just hers. It was a shared journey, a test of skill, intelligence, and survival. The human had survived her ultimate trap, and in doing so had turned the hunter into the hunted. Kailara smiled faintly, feeling anticipation for what would come next. The hunt was not over. Not yet. The first light of dawn spilled over SCIFI-Prime, bathing the jagged cliffs and crimson dust in pale gold. Kailara sat atop a high ridge, observing the canyon floor below. The hunt had lasted days, but it had changed her. She no longer viewed Ethan as prey. He had survived every trap, every test, every prediction she had made, and in doing so had taught her lessons she could not have learned from her own kind. Ethan moved below her, cautious but confident. He paused near a narrow stream, examining the terrain with careful eyes. Kailara studied him silently. He was small, lean, and human. Yet he carried himself with a presence that commanded attention. Every step, every glance, every choice revealed his intelligence. He was not just surviving, he was thriving. Kailara thought back to her training, her entire life as a hunter. Her people valued strength, speed, and cunning above all else. A predator dominated through power and strategy. Yet here was a human, relying not on strength, but on observation, adaptability, and careful planning. He had survived encounters that would have killed even the most skilled alien hunters. Her pride flared, but it was tempered by admiration. She had underestimated humans. She had expected fear, weakness, and panic. Instead, she had found intelligence, courage, and resilience. Kailara descended from her perch, moving carefully along the rocks. She did not make a sound, but Ethan sensed her presence immediately. He turned, meeting her eyes. There was no fear in his gaze, no aggression. Instead, there was acknowledgement, a recognition of the challenge they had shared, the lessons they had exchanged without words. "You have survived everything," Kailara said quietly. "Your people, I did not expect this." Ethan studied her carefully. "You expected weakness," he said. "Humans are small, yes, and fragile in some ways, but we survive because we think, adapt, and learn. That is enough." Kailara nodded slowly. His words rang true. He had survived not through brute force, not through strength alone, but through awareness, strategy, and careful observation. She realized that her own people often overlooked these qualities, believing only in power and speed. "You have taught me something," Kailara admitted, "not about hunting, but about survival." Ethan inclined his head. "And you have taught me too," he said, "about skill, strategy, and the importance of preparation. We both adapt, in our own ways." The canyon around them was quiet, save for the gentle flow of water and distant calls of alien creatures. The danger had not disappeared, yet there was a moment of peace, a fragile understanding between hunter and prey. Kailara felt her heart settle in a way she had not expected. Respect had entered where rivalry had once been. For a moment, Kalara reflected on her own life. She had always hunted to prove her superiority, to test her skill, and to assert dominance. But this hunt had been different. The human had survived her traps, outsmarted her strategies, and remained calm under pressure. In the process, he had forced her to see that strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, awareness, and respect for life could be just as powerful, if not more so. Kalara approached cautiously, her claws flexing but unused. She did not want to intimidate him, only to acknowledge him. "You are unlike anything I have ever faced," she said. "Small, yet capable. Weak, yet strong in ways I cannot ignore." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is human survival," he said. "We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. But we think, we adapt, and we respect life. That is how we endure." Kalara nodded again, feeling a sense of humility. Her species had always measured worth in terms of physical power. Yet here was a human proving that the mind and spirit could equal, even surpass, strength. The wind stirred the dust across the canyon, and Kalara felt a strange exhilaration. She realized that the hunt had not ended with capture or death. It had ended with understanding and respect. The human had survived not by defeating her, but by teaching her. "You could have been my prey," she said softly. "But instead, you have been my teacher." Ethan inclined his head. "And you have shown me what skill and preparation truly mean. We learn from each other, even if we are different." Kalara considered his words. Differences, she realized, were not weaknesses. They were strengths. Humans survived where others might fail because they embraced adaptability, intelligence, and morality. Her own species had overlooked these qualities, relying too heavily on strength. For a moment, they simply observed each other, silent but connected by the shared understanding of survival. Kalara felt an unexpected warmth in her chest, a sense of admiration and respect she had never known for any prey. This human had survived against impossible odds, not through brute force, but through mind and will. Kalara finally spoke again. "I will return to my people," she said, "and I will speak of what I have learned, of humans, of you. You are remarkable." Ethan nodded. "And I will continue to survive. Humans endure because we learn, adapt, and respect life. That is our strength." Kalara stepped back, giving him space. She had no intention of hunting him further, not today, not ever. The chase had ended, but the lessons remained. She felt her perspective shift entirely. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was capable, intelligent, and resilient. The canyon grew quiet as the sun climbed higher, casting pale light across the rocks. Kalara watched Ethan move through the terrain with cautious confidence. Every step he took demonstrated awareness, intelligence, and skill. She realized that this human could survive anywhere, against any challenge, because his mind was as sharp as any weapon. For the first time in her life, Kalara felt that victory in a hunt was not always measured in capture or death. Victory could also be measured in understanding, respect, and growth. She had faced the human expecting to prove superiority, yet she had gained wisdom instead. Ethan paused near a small plateau, looking back at Kalara. "You will tell your people about this, won't you?" he asked quietly. Kalara nodded. "I will," she said. "They will know that humans are not to be underestimated, that survival is more than strength, that intelligence, awareness, and respect can triumph." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then our encounter has meaning," he said, "not just for us, but for both our worlds." Kalara felt the weight of his words. Indeed, the encounter had meaning. It was not just a hunt. It was a lesson in humility, respect, and the power of human ingenuity. She had entered the canyon believing in human weakness. Yet she now understood that survival was about adaptability, intelligence, and moral strength. The two of them moved apart slowly, each acknowledging the other's skill and intelligence. Kaylara felt a strange satisfaction in letting him go. The hunt had ended, but the lesson remained. She would carry it with her, a reminder that strength alone was never enough. As Kaylara climbed back toward the ridge, she glanced down at Ethan. He was moving confidently, aware of his surroundings, and fully alive. She felt admiration, respect, and even a touch of awe. This human had survived where most would perish. He had outsmarted her, taught her, and earned her respect. Kaylara paused on the ridge, looking across the canyon at the distant horizon. SciFi-Prime was harsh, dangerous, and unforgiving. Yet here was a human thriving in its extremes. He was not just surviving, he was demonstrating the power of the human spirit, intelligence, and adaptability. The canyon was quiet, the wind carrying red dust and the faint calls of alien creatures. Kaylara felt a sense of peace she had never experienced during a hunt. The thrill of the chase had transformed into understanding, the desire for victory into respect, and the expectation of weakness into acknowledgement of strength. She spoke quietly to herself, more a reflection than a declaration. Humans are not weak. They are capable, clever, and resilient. Their survival depends on mind and heart as much as strength. I have underestimated them until now. Ethan paused one final time, looking up at her on the ridge. Their eyes met, and for a moment there was understanding without words. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted. They had learned from each other, and in that learning, both had gained something greater than victory. Kaylara turned and began the climb back toward the cliffs, her mind alive with thoughts of strategy, observation, and respect. She had learned that true strength was not measured by force alone, but by intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to endure. Humans, she realized, embodied these qualities in ways her people had never fully appreciated. Ethan continued across the canyon floor, moving carefully, confidently, and fully aware of his environment. He had survived the hunt, but more importantly, he had demonstrated the power of human ingenuity and perseverance. Kaylara knew that the story of their encounter would travel far, and the lesson would endure. Humans may appear fragile, but their adaptability, intelligence, and moral strength made them formidable in ways that few could comprehend. As the sun rose higher, Kaylara looked down one last time. The human she thought she was hunting had not only survived, he had taught her a lesson she would never forget. She felt gratitude, respect, and awe. Survival was not about domination alone, it was about intelligence, awareness, and understanding. The canyon was silent except for the wind, the dust, and the distant sounds of alien creatures. Kaylara felt a sense of closure, knowing that the hunt had ended not with death, but with wisdom and respect. She had faced a human and learned the truth. Survival was about mind, heart, and adaptability. Kaylara smiled faintly. Humanity, she realized, was not weak. It was extraordinary, and the human she had hunted, Ethan, was living proof. The hunt was over.